Sabrina Carpenter released the album cover for her new album called A Man's Best Friend, and this is the cover. People were pretty upset about it. And by people, I mean feminists. So you could know from very early on that any sort of feminist criticism that was going to be presented about this cover was going to be immediately dismissed and attacked, because people really hate having to think about just how much men disrespect women and just how often women will degrade themselves, because that is what it is we are expected to do to survive in this society, especially if you want to have relationships with men. So I guess a part of this question surrounding this album cover has been, is the cover sexist? And I'm a little bit confused as to why this is the question. What we're seeing happen in this photo is something very common and actually very not novel by any means, is the exploitation of a power imbalance. It is a man physically dominating a woman and degrading her, having her on her hands and knees in a subservient position to him while he grips her hair in a disrespectful and aggressive manner. This idea of men exploiting this power imbalance, of men getting off on being able to subjugate women, is nothing new. We have a multi-billion or multi-trillion-dollar porn industry that basically just gets off on this entirely. What I think is the problem here is the fact that this is a degrading position to be in for Sabrina, and to eroticize it or to kind of present it as being attractive or enjoyable or fun only works to further the narrative that this sort of thing of putting women in this degrading position sexually is okay and is fine, and that women love it and we should keep doing it all the time. And then, of course, refer to yourself as a man's best friend, to liken yourself to a dog, to an animal, is just the cherry on top of this horribly sexist cake. Now, I think one of the main things that caused a lot of uproar around this cover is people just saying, well, you know, isn't feminism supposed to be about choice? Okay, Sabrina is just expressing her sexuality. Like, she's just embodied in her sexuality. Like, I don't get it. Like, this is just her expressing her interest and her desire. She wants it. So I'm just going to share with you guys one of my favorite quotes from radical feminist Andrea Dworkin. Sexual freedom is when women do the things that men think are sexy. The more women do these things, the more sexually free they are. Why is it that sexual liberation as a woman is entirely defined by what it is men find to be sexually desirable? When you think about that in conjunction with the fact that men really, really, really enjoy demeaning and degrading and humiliating women, then it leads to the very clear conclusion that, of course, when women want to be sexually liberated, they want to put themselves in degrading positions, because that's what men want, and sexual liberation is just pretty much only about what men want. I'm not saying that women don't have a genuine desire to be on the receiving end of that sort of degradation. It has been incessantly eroticized, not just by the porn industry, but by nearly every other facet of our society. That is a whole other larger conversation. I actually talked about that a little bit in my last video about why women find their suffering sexy. But there's also something to be said about, if this is what men want, and you as a woman, the vast majority of women are heterosexual, they want to have relations with men. If they want to have a romantic sexual relationship with a man, then you are going to need to be okay being subjugated, or that's what it feels like. So, of course, women continue to eroticize their own suffering and their own subjugation. Thus, Sabrina Carpenter's album cover. I am not saying that women cannot express their sexuality without it being a problem, or without it being degrading. What I am saying is that this picture specifically is degrading. And the whole reason this conversation is being had is because we all, on some level, understand that. Specifically, if we saw the roles reversed, we would understand it as being demeaning, because we afford men that autonomy. We don't tell men that they need to shrink themselves, that they need to demean themselves, specifically for the gratification of a woman. All the pushback being given to the Sabrina Carpenter cover, all it really does is work to enforce the idea that men sexually subjugating women and finding that gratifying is perfectly fine and okay, and that if you decide to call that out and to criticize that, that you are the problem and you are the weird one. At the end of the day, Sabrina Carpenter is 26 years old, and I'm not really interested in policing the actions of individual women. But I am interested in saying that this liberal feminist idea that criticizing anything that a woman does, assuming that just because a woman's doing something that means that there's no space for it to be problematic, and especially going with this idea that sexual empowerment for women has to be entirely defined by what it is men want, I'm not interested in giving in to any of that. Anyway, my camera's overheating. Thank you so much for being here. Subscribe, and you'll probably get you will get another video from me in 2 weeks. Thank you so much. Bye.